Hello there, and welcome to Conversations About Conversations. My name is Ivan Farber. I'm the host. I'm joined by my co-host, Jules Swisher. She's my pal, my friend, my neighbor. Howdy, neighbor.
Howdy, partner.
Howdy, partner. And we are also joined by special guest, David DeCelle. David is a speaker, entrepreneur, coach. He's the president of Model FA. David, welcome to Conversations About Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me, and a special shout out to Michael for making the initial introduction. Without him, we wouldn't be doing this today.
You know how you now have two-factor authentication for logging into websites and secure stuff?
Yep.
Like you log in and they say, okay, we're going to send you a text with a code. I thought about using that for interpersonal communications. And so, David, I think this is up your alley in terms of the multiple things. And it came about because I'm in the process of buying a second house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm dealing with a realtor, a mortgage broker, and an insurance agent.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can, and you can see right away how people handle their business, how they handle these are all new people to us. We got a referral, the realtor, we got a mortgage broker we hadn't used before, and an insurance agent. We actually are switching insurance. And I had a lesson with each one of them. So with the realtor, we went to do an inspection and he was supposed to text the other realtor. And when he did, he texted, but he didn't hit send. And so we're sitting there, and this new house is about an hour away. We're sitting there outside the house, waiting for the realtor, waiting for the inspector. And we're there on time, which to us on time is about 10 minutes early. Mm-hmm. And we get a text, call me before you go. Call me before you go, we're there. So that was one lesson. It's like he could have done two-factor authentication if he had also done, in addition to texting, made a phone call.
I'm willing to bet that it wasn't typed out and he forgot to click send. I'm willing to bet that it was just never done. That's my opinion. That's a lame excuse.
It was pretty lame, but again, to the idea of two-factor authentication, like if you're always thinking two methods, and I actually got this from when I was a mortgage broker, a relationship manager for a mortgage company. We did a lot of faxing, and I don't think people do much faxing anymore, but we did a lot of faxing. And of course, faxes don't always go through. Mm-hmm. And so it was always a fax and an email, or a fax and a voicemail. There was always two-factor authentication. So that's story number one. And maybe he did type it, maybe he didn't type it. He's still new to me. And I'm in that moment of, would I refer him to someone else? And probably not. And because of that little thing, like that he didn't do two-factor authentication.
And that's called the anchoring effect. You can either anchor someone in a bad experience or anchor them in a good experience. And then they're going to think of you that way for the entirety of the relationship. And if it's a bad experience, then they're going to go somewhere else. And if it's a good experience, they're going to tell everyone else. And they'll still tell everyone else if it's a bad experience, but they'll also leave you as well. So you got to anchor them on the front end in terms of what is that experience going to be like. And then if you anchor them on the good thing, they're only going to, their reticular activating system, their RAS, is going to kick in and take over, and they're going to filter all the good stuff and only comprehend the good stuff, and they're going to overlook the bad stuff. If you anchor them on the front end with bad stuff, they're not going to see any of the good stuff that you do. They're only going to hit on the bad stuff that you do. So anchoring on the front end is incredibly important.
I love that RAS. I had to think about that for a little bit. You're absolutely right. He's anchored that way. In fact, so then when he showed up, he was just very apologetic. And I have a thing about this, and I'll do an episode on this at one point, of apologizing prematurely. It's premature apologizing. It just doesn't work. We're overdoing it. He apologized like 12 times. Mm-hmm. And all I could do is just like kind of look away and just like washing me over with apologies. Now, this was the one saving grace. he had somehow picked up farm fresh eggs and he offered my wife a dozen farm fresh eggs. So that is anchored, like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm always suspicious if someone is going to offer us farm fresh eggs.
Right.
Is it for
Like,
something
what'd you
that,
mess up?
yeah.
What'd you do wrong?
So now this led me to the second experience in this trifecta of experiences where I asked this new insurance agent who we are not just doing our new homeowners through this, we're switching everything, auto and all the different things, two homeowners policies. And I get the email, hey, you can sign up for Nationwide online. And I went to do it and I got caught. I didn't have my policy number. So I wrote him an email and said, can you text me the policy number? And 2 days went by and I'm, of course, he's in the probationary period for me. Like I'm testing, okay, I'm switching to him. Is he going to be responsive? And I didn't get anything. And so I sent a follow-up email, that kind of like snarky, forward the email, the sent email that you sent. And
Oh yeah.
like, hey, I didn't see anything. He wrote me back. He's like, I texted you right away. And I believe him. And he even says, I texted you at 1:39 p.m. I totally believe him. But how he did it was he texted me through like his business system. And I never got the text. So if there had been two-factor authentication, like if he had said, I texted you like you asked, I texted you the policy number. I kind of wanted the policy number to be in a text message versus an email so that it was a little bit more secure. It's not secure, but if he had done two-factor authentication, it would have been great. So
Yeah,
I'm preaching the two factors.
Yeah, and it's and the two-factor, by the way, can even be something to the effect of hey, just like, so when I send an email, like a follow-up, so this is actually important for both of you. When you send a Loom video through email, okay, to your point, Jules, there may be some sort of firewall or security setting or something where if there's outside links from an email that hasn't emailed them before, it may block it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I tend to do for new people who I send it to, that doesn't just have like a regular Gmail address, but it has some sort of financial institution or something like that, is I'll shoot them a text and say, hey, I just sent you an email that has a video. Sometimes it gets blocked. Please confirm that you received it. And then, so what happens is, again, they see me pop up twice. So we're kind of having a formal discussion and we're having an informal discussion on the side. And if it doesn't go through, which has happened every now and again, it's saved my butt because there's none of that. Well, no, I sent it at 1:39. Right. So I agree with you, Ivan.
Okay, so I have my third story.
All right.
Yeah.
Third story is on the mortgage side. So on the mortgage side, you have loan officer, which essentially salesperson, right? Like they're the front person. Then you have what I used to have as a job as a relationship manager, or in this case, a self-described client experience manager. And then you have a processor. And I have a long relationship with the loan officer. We got one email from the client experience manager, and then we have the processor. We left voicemails for the client experience manager. We left 4 voicemails. All 4 unreturned. No returned phone message, no email, nothing. We did track her down once. My wife tracked her down through the switchboard and finally get a hold of her to get the questions that we had. And maybe we didn't understand the role of the client experience manager. Maybe. But we still, to this day, she has not acknowledged that she never returned those messages.
Mm-hmm.
It left us feeling that we weren't very important, that we must have done something wrong. Maybe we had bad phone karma or just whatever it was. But it was so puzzling to me that the client experience manager was non-responsive. There was 0-factor authentication.
And I think you're also very kind in that you're sharing these stories and not sharing their names. But most people aren't that kind, and they'll bad news travels really fast. I think good news stops along the way, unless someone's a big advocate of yours. But people love to complain naturally. And I think they're fortunate that you're not sharing their names. And if they happen to listen to your podcast, they know who you're talking about. But it's interesting how one bad thing. So I listened to a podcast by Andy Frisella. It's called The Real AF. And he shared an example. He's a super successful entrepreneur, for those of you who don't know who he is. But he shared an example where he had this cake lady. And actually, this was his brother talking, Sal. He had this cake lady, like super cool cakes. And they're the type of people where if someone does an amazing job, they tell everyone. So there was like over 100 of their connections, because they're in a super wealthy circle that for anniversaries and birthdays, they have these extravagant cakes, right? So they did a lot of their business. So Andy is super successful. He's a CEO of these companies, and his brother Sal is still very successful, and he manages those companies, but there's different levels of wealth there. So she went over to Sal's house to deliver a cake, and she went to text a friend saying, Sal's house is way smaller than Andy's, and basically talking smack. And of course, happened to send it to Sal.
Yep.
So he was irate. Andy was irate. And so they went out of their way to call everyone that had done business with her in the past from them and said, here's the situation. And they found a new cake lady who now does all the business. So that one text message took away about 100 of their 100 of her clients. So you gotta be careful.
Jules and David and everybody out there, thank you for being a part of this conversation about conversations.